Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Check.
Hello.
Check.
Hello.
Check.
Nothing? All right.
Dang.
I'll figure it out. Thanks.
Oh, shoot. What do we do now?
Yeah. So, sorry. I'm sorry about that, guys. We're just gonna... What's going on, ASTROVILLEans? If you saw that, just forget it happened. We're back with season 2, episode 11, and I've got my beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful wife with me here today. Her name is Cara Lyles.
Hi.
Hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I feel like we did this already.
We did. It just was a long time ago.
Oh, I was talking about... Oh yeah, it didn't happen, right? No, sorry, the audio was what just happened with the audio?
No idea.
I don't even remember. Oh, I had to change a little setting. I was messing with stuff. Sorry about that, guys. You know, when it comes to technology, I'm not that great, you know?
That's not true.
Well, look, I'm okay with technology, but there's such a vast array of it that I can't specialize in all of it. And these programs, they're above my pay grade. Some of them.
Gotcha.
It's tough to keep up.
Yeah, it's tough. But what we were saying though, which you didn't get to hear, is that we did this podcast. We came together and did a show on season 1. I think it was episode 10. We did, and I was listening to it today. And it was really good. We talked about like how we met and our relationship.
Our backgrounds a little bit.
Yeah, our backgrounds, how we were raised, how we came up and all that. And but I didn't get to listen to the whole thing. So but that was a really good one. And I think after season 1 ended, that was my favorite one of all of season 1.
It was my favorite one too, but
and I've heard from other people that was the favorite too, so I had to get you back. You're a fan favorite.
Well, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a while. A lot has changed since our last podcast. I think that's about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that's happened. Phew, I don't even know where to start.
So, I think the show ended at the end of 2021. Season 1 ended. And at that point, we went into the new year. And then so the light seekers moved out of that building. So we weren't meeting in a building for a whole year almost.
Right.
And I think it was close to the beginning of that year I got injured at work, right?
Yes.
2022.
So you had got injured in like mid-January. You got a hernia and
it was like almost a hernia. So like
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't know like the extent of it because you never went to the doctor.
Yeah, like I didn't have the herniatic tear.
But I mean, the way that you responded to it was
I just was
really
like
severe.
If I did anything more than what I was doing, how I was working, then I would have ripped whatever. I don't even remember what a hernia really is, but then they would have had to go in and cut me open and put some kind of mesh on my nutsack or something. I don't know.
Oh my God.
I didn't want that. So I was like, I got to chill out. And
yeah, I mean, you couldn't hold the kids. You were like bedridden for a while.
Yeah,
and it was really bad. It was pretty bad. So what happened is...
And you had gone to school in what, 2020 or 20?
I had just had Kai. So 2021. Wait, no. No, you're right. 2020. Yeah.
So you've been talking about you were doing nails every now and then because you graduated and you're an official nail tech.
Right. I was practicing and
yep, you're practicing,
getting my foot in the door a little bit.
Yeah, trying to get some clients and stuff, but you didn't really have a solid place to do nails.
Right. And I'm gonna kind of comment on that because it's crazy how that all happened. Because I literally remember being in my room and just like being so frustrated, crying out to the Lord, asking him to give me a place to do nails because it was such a passion in my heart and it's something that God has really placed in my heart to do. So like anybody who has a talent, when you have a talent and you can't use it, it's very frustrating. And I just remember crying out to the Lord like consistently because Zach doesn't like the smell of acrylic.
Yeah, I was like, you can't be doing that in the house.
He told me that it's from the devil. The smell is from the devil. So
sounds like something I would say.
So that was frustrating.
Yeah, and it sticks around forever.
It does. And I mean, I can't really blame him. I've been in this industry for 5 years now, and so I'm really immune to the smell.
Yeah, that smell gives me like an instant headache.
And it gives a lot of people headaches, and so I wasn't going to try to push him to let me do it because the house would always smell like that, and the baby was young, and so it was just...
Oh, like you could do it on the balcony.
Yeah, but there's bugs, and there's no lighting, and whatever. So, long story short, I was praying for opportunity, and I didn't want Zach to not be working necessarily because he was doing well in his work, and like it didn't seem fair for me to kind of put him on hold for me to do what I needed to do. And I had the boys, and it was just like,
yeah, so it was like we couldn't both work at the same time because of childcare. We didn't have really a way to have. It's not like we couldn't have taken them to a daycare, but most daycares, like the prices that they charge is like,
that's not even,
it's the trade-off isn't even worth it,
right,
for us to see our kids less.
Yeah. And then who do we know that we can trust with our kids?
That's the main thing.
Could raise our kids for, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to trust.
Yeah.
People, like you got to know people for a while and really know them until you're ready to be like, all right, yeah, I'll leave my kids alone with you.
Right. And even then, as a mother, it's still like there's so many things that could happen, and then on top of that, you're sacrificing your time and your relationship with your children, and it's just like, I better be making bank to be away from my kids for 10 hours a day.
So that's about the time that I got injured. And so I'm like, I couldn't work. I wanted to work, but I was like, I really can't at this point.
Right. And I didn't want you to work because with a hernia, you don't know like the extent. We didn't know the extent of it, and we didn't know if he was going to go to the doctor. I still wanted to work, but I was like, I don't want to make it worse. Right. You know? And then I was like on light duty, and it's like, yeah. So she was like, this is my moment. Yeah, so pretty much I remember you got hurt, and then I pretty much had like a 2-week deadline to find a job before like money started being like slim. So I remember I went to every nail salon in the city. I started writing them down. I started crossing them off the list real quick because some of them. So then I was like, yeah.
Yikes.
Because there's a lot of nail salons with altars and spirits, and I'm very sensitive in the spirit, and or a lot of people most nail salons in this city do 60-40, which is where the nail tech makes 60% of each service, and then the owner makes 40, but some places around here are 50-50. I would be like, yeah, y'all are tripping. y'all know everyone else does 60-40, y'all do 50-50. You're off the list, you know what I'm saying? So I went around and I just kind of asked the Lord really more than anything. And I still don't know how I ended up at the nail salon I'm at. I was just talking to somebody about that. Because I'm the only American there that is a nail tech. All the rest of the nail techs are Vietnamese. And the whole time I've worked there, there's nobody else that's been hired that's American. But when I met my boss, I just felt that it's like I knew right away that she was going to hire me. And there was just something about her that was different. And so
you're going to have to tell some stories about like what went down at work.
Oh yeah.
But
it's a lot that's gone down.
Yeah. But before we get into some stories, I wanted to say this. Last time what we did was we kind of weaved in and out of the, our story of meeting and childhood and stuff like that. But in between, we would every now and then pause the story and read a question. So we actually got Jason here today with us. Jason Lee, thank you so much.
Shout out to Emma for sitting with the boys.
She's sitting with the boys. Thank you so much.
What?
And Jason's here. Sorry, we don't have a camera for him today.
It's all right.
It's really difficult to set the third camera up.
I prefer it this way anyway.
Oh yeah. Cool. So yeah. So if you have any questions, hey guys, hey Gabby.
I'm watching it.
So yeah, if you guys have any questions, just drop them in the chat. So the reason why we're doing this podcast isn't just to tell our story, but we've gone through some stuff in our marriage that we're still here.
Right.
And we love each other.
Yeah.
And
God has done so much through the trials.
Yes, but we've learned so much. And we've been able to counsel other marriages, multiple, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like with results. And there's fruit, there's results in our marriage. And it's not always butterflies and sunshine, but
we're willing to be honest, and we're willing to be open and
and vulnerable. So if you have questions, we're going to do our best to answer them honestly, and hopefully, especially for younger couples who haven't been married for, very long. We've been married for almost 8 years now. Nearly a decade. Can you believe that?
Yes and no.
Does it feel like a decade?
No, but it feels like I'm getting old.
Don't go there. You don't even want to know. So we've been married for a while, and we've learned, and I would much rather you younger couples learn from people who have been through it and have come out of it, and we have the fruit, the results that we have a good marriage. We have a great marriage.
We do.
And
it's hard work.
We have great kids too.
We do.
So if you have questions, we'd rather you take some wisdom from here than to smack your head against the wall.
Or to go talk to people that don't have genuine hearts about reconciling marriages, because we've had counselors ourselves.
We've had counselors that pushed us advised us towards our own selfish motives, and towards their selfish motives of protecting us to abandon each other.
Yeah, if we had listened to our marriage counselors, we wouldn't be together. So
marriage counseling, I don't always recommend marriage counseling. But you need, you know what, a very mature couple, a man and woman of God that have not counseled or don't do marriage counseling would be better off going and getting counsel from them than to any old marriage counseling.
Yeah, I think you really just have to be careful, because it's not even just about like a marriage counselor. Like, counseling in general opens the door to gossip. And if you're vulnerable with people that are, not closing doors, or they have ill intentions, it's a dangerous place to be, to open up to whoever, about the struggles that you and your husband go through or your family go through, because those are the closest people to you. And so I think marriage counseling is a great thing. We've had marriage counseling in the past year, but it's because we have a a couple that we trust and we love, and we have seen them live their lives outside of, you know.
We went twice.
Yeah. No, I think it was more than that.
It was more than that?
Yeah.
We need it every now and then. We need counseling. Because,
and I think everybody does.
Yeah.
Because it's really...
Jason, did you want to say something?
Oh, there's a question that came up.
Oh, a question. Okay. Can you, we'll get to that in just a moment. We'll get to that question. But just to finish what we were saying about marriage counseling.
I was just saying that, like, if there's a point in your marriage where you feel like you need marriage counseling, get it.
Yeah.
Like at any means, you know, even if it's uncomfortable and it's like, man, I don't want to go down the route of what that sounds like. It's a helpful thing to get another godly perspective.
Yeah. And
to have a woman, you know, vouch for you and how you feel, and a man do the same. Because when you're in a marriage, you know, nobody's vouching for like your emotions, if you're right or wrong, or like if you're caught up, or like, you know, if you're prideful or this or that.
But it also takes two, if you're going to go to counseling, to marriage counseling, you both got to be about it. Otherwise, go and just get a godly person to tell you how you're tripping. Because you don't need to go telling people or a counselor about how this person's this and that and they're not doing this and that.
Yeah, because then it turns into gossip, and then it gets really dangerous because they're pacifying your emotions, and then you just go to them to feel better, and it's not even about change.
It's about truth.
So
you need to hear the truth. That's what marriage counseling is about. It's about hearing the truth. You got to get smacked in the face by some truth.
Right. So.
All right. What's the question?
Question is, and I don't know the answer to this because this was on the last podcast, but it's a good question. Was there ever a time in your relationship where one had faith and the other didn't? If so, how did you guys get through and both make it to the Lord? This is from Destiny Ramirez.
I love you, Destiny.
Thank you, Destiny. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been in that a few times.
Yeah.
There's been
through seasons.
Times where she was just like not
smoking weed,
not trusting God. Just
doing whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, but when you're married for so long,
there's been times when I was in a dark place and not trusting God, and there's been times where we both were not
trusting God.
But
and that
the
was
beautiful thing
place.
About that is that, and there's a couple of points that I want to make on marriage that I think are not talked about. One of them being marriage is a triunion. And we talked about this on the last one. Mm-hmm. Marriage is a picture of God. It's the first institution that God put into order after he created the world and he made people. Marriage, that was the first thing. And it's designated to be a picture of God. And just like we as individuals are triune, we're a spirit, we have a soul, and we have a body, right? God is Father, Son, and Spirit. Marriage is God, man, and wife in union as one. And so even when she wasn't having faith and when I wasn't having faith, at the same time, God was faithful.
That's good.
God was faithful, holding our marriage together when neither of us wanted to.
Yeah. And I can name countless times where, I mean, actually recently, in the past year, I had been asking God to really put my husband in a place where he would lead and he would be in a different place in his spirituality, because I felt like we weren't on the same page for a long time because we were in different ministries and we weren't doing ministry together. Mm-hmm. And so I prayed for that. I prayed for that so hard for so long, and he answered my prayer. And so I think a big part of being in a position where you and your husband are not, or you and your wife are not in the same place spiritually, the biggest and the best thing you can do is pray. And when you get frustrated with them, you know, because they're not on the same page as you, you've got to also remember that you can't be prideful, and you don't really like, you know what they're going through because of what they share with you, but you don't really know. And so for you to expect
you don't know
them
the
to
depths
be
of that, and they probably don't trust you enough to share the depths of what they're going through with you if you're not, if you don't know the depths of it.
Yeah, and even if you do, I mean, you've got to be at a place in your marriage where you're like, okay, this is where my husband is at, but I'm still going to go to church, and I'm still going to get fed, and I'm still going to do my part, because I know that when God answers my prayer, that he'll reward me for doing what I'm supposed to be doing and being patient. Because if the roles were reversed and, you weren't where you're supposed to be spiritually, I would hope and pray that my husband would be where he should be spiritually, because I can't. You know what I'm saying? So you really have to step outside of yourself and be like, okay, let me not get frustrated. Let me not get irritated. Because there were a lot of times where I wanted him to do a certain thing to help me because I needed somebody to lead me, but he wasn't there. And so it's so easy to go to that place of like frustration and anger and like questioning, like, what is God doing, But I really had to learn to just pray, because there's no point in arguing with somebody about something that they don't see. So that's my advice.
Yeah, and we can talk about some of the situations that we've been in this past year, the difficulties that we've had in marriage and how we have overcome these difficulties. But just to answer that question from my perspective, like the Bible teaches us that when our mate is not going after God, our responsibility is to love them. Because when we weren't going after God, he was still coming after us.
Right.
And if you want them to see God for who he is, you're the closest and best example that they're going to have.
That's good.
So the number one thing to remember is that it's not about you.
Say it again.
It's not about you. I'll say it one more time. If you're in a situation where you're the only one in the marriage that's seeking after God, then remember, it's not about you. Marriage, the purpose of marriage is to be an example of God's character. One that people on earth can look at and see. So if you're in a marriage, you're the only one seeking God, the other one's not, the Bible teaches us to love them and be patient, pray for them, and it's God's goodness that leads us to repentance. It's going to be that heart that has no conditions on love. I'm going to love you no matter what.
Yes.
Through your abuse, through your infidelity, through whatever it is. Now, some people are like, oh, that's just too much. And look, I'm not saying that if you're getting beat up every day, just let it happen. You got to set boundaries as well. It's not all about enabling. Love doesn't enable people. But love
does conquer all things.
Conquers all, and love does not have true love. God's kind of love does not have conditions. And so learning how to navigate loving like God loves, we've in our marriage, there's been some physical altercations.
Yeah.
In our marriage, there's been infidelity.
Yeah.
In our marriage, there's been psychological abuse.
Yeah.
So, and we're still here.
And we're still here.
So you can't tell me that
he won't do it.
Oh, if you cross this line, you should be able to,
it's justified.
Yeah, it's never justified.
And it's really up to you. What are you like? How much are you willing to love this person? How much can you love this person through? Like, we chose, and we had everybody whispering in our ears throughout all of our decisions that we've made regarding each other. And there's still people that advised us not to be together. And among those people are close family members, you know, people that
Close family, best friends. Yeah.
I mean, and through all of that, those people can sit back and say that they're wrong because we have 3 children. We're in a happy, healthy marriage. And I'm not going to say that everybody's able to get through what we've been through, but God is able to get you through what we've been through.
So humility is key. If you want to see God touch the husband or wife that is not seeking after him, then you have to go wholeheartedly after God and say, God, I want your heart for them. I don't want to see them through my own perspective anymore. I want to see what you see in them. And when you look at them, you call that forth out of them, what God says about them, and you treat them how God loves them.
And this man is not speaking for, like, I can testify that Zach really does love me that way. And every woman longs for that. And I've always needed that. And every woman does. And so I encourage you guys to just stick it through. It's worth it. Because now we've been through everything and nothing could tear us apart. And not a lot of people can say that they've been through everything that we've been through and that they still love each other and that God is still moving and still working. And it really heightens your faith when you go through trials with people, because when I'm frustrated with him or he does something that pisses me off.
And I do a lot.
He does. But I know that the trials that we've been through compared to what we experience is nothing. So I'm like, God, do what you do best, because we've been through hell and back. So I know you can get us through this because we've been through everything else. And so if you're willing to love your spouse to the extent where you really look like Christ and there's really nothing that could keep you from loving that person, do it. God will honor it. And it's not easy. And it's not something that's for weak people. But it's the most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced, because this man has seen me through everything. Through my worst, through my best. I've hurt him. I've cheated on him. I've done so many things that he doesn't deserve, but he still loves me.
I do.
And he loves me so much better because he knows all of me.
And, you know, I can imagine that just from that, you know, there's probably some guys watching that are like, oh, hell no. If my girl cheated on me,
same with y'all,
it'd be a wrap.
Right.
But I've cheated on her, not just with other women. Like, we were separated for a period.
Almost a full year. We were separated and we lived in different states, and we were completely single in our heads.
Yeah. And I was acting like it.
And so was I.
But not only that, but I've watched porn being married, and that's cheating. Mm-hmm. So in the same way of any man who would be like, oh, if my wife stepped out on me, do you watch porn? Because...
Or it doesn't even have to be porn. What does your Instagram page look like? Do you got girls' booties on your Instagram page? You got, you know, it doesn't have to look like porn. If your mind is in a place where you're lusting after women on a consistent basis, you're already there. Mm. So.
That's right. That's right.
Got real fast.
Now, the more you act on it physically, the more physical repercussions the more physical the consequences. But it's still like, if you're lusting in your mind constantly as a married man or a married woman, you're doing great psychological harm to yourself and to your spouse.
Absolutely. And to your sex life.
Yeah. And there's evidence for that. There's scientific and spiritual evidence for that. So that's
but I just want to rehome the focus though, that the only reason that we were ever able to get through any of these things that we're describing is because at some point in time, one of us submitted to the Lord.
We humbled ourselves to God and to each other.
And without doing that in a marriage, there's little to no hope, because the enemy will continue to wreak havoc. And so I just want to reiterate that if these are things that you're going through in your marriage and you haven't humbled yourself before the Lord and repented for your own actions, then you're in a dangerous place, because that's the first step. And forgiving your spouse for hurting you, that's huge. In our marriage, when we went through our biggest devastation when we separated, I was in a place where I was closest to the Lord than I think I've been. I don't want to say in my life, but that's like a peak moment in my life where I was just so close to the Lord, and I was constantly praying for my husband, even though we weren't talking, like we weren't on good terms, like he wasn't being nice to me, like it was brutal.
Yeah.
And I remember the Lord would tell me to text him and be like, you know, I'm praying for you, or I care about you, or stuff that I didn't really want to say to him because he was being so mean to me. But I remember the Lord would tell me those things and I would be obedient. And I remember feeling my heart when I would send him those things, and I could feel how confused and convicted I made him feel, because I was still loving him even when he was abusing me, you know, with his words or whatever the case was. And I still remember the day that we hadn't spoken for probably 6 months. And during those 6 months, I was just praying, working, and that was it. Like, I had given God everything. And I remember the day he called me. I had spoken in tongues for hours and hours the day before. And I remember the day that he called me to apologize for everything that he had done. And that was like, I knew that was because I was warring in the spirit for my marriage, even when it didn't look like it was going to come to pass. And I laid it at the feet of Jesus. And I was like, even if I'm not with this man, like, I don't care. I still want him to be saved. I still want his life to turn out better than what I know it is. Like, I genuinely loved him through our trials. And that's the heart of God that he wants you to have for your spouse. Like, aside from being in love with this person, they need to see Jesus, and the only person that he saw it through was me.
Emma got a question.
What's up, Emma?
Something in the chat. When times get tough and you feel disconnected from your spouse, how do you come back together and reconnect?
Ooh. Can I answer that one?
Sure.
Okay. This has actually happened kind of recently with us. And it's normal because life is crazy, for one. So don't think to yourself that, like, don't be in your head about it as a woman, especially for me as a woman who deals with rejection. When I feel like my husband is far from me, I feel like I almost want to pull back even more, because I don't want to feel any more rejection from him. Even if he never was rejecting me in the first place, he's probably just going through his own stuff. So kind of look at your perspective and remember who you are and what you've been through before your husband, first of all. Because most of the time when I feel like we're drifting apart, he doesn't feel like that. Or if he does, he hasn't voiced it. But I think being transparent with your spouse about where you're at, which is really hard, pretty hard for me to do when it comes to, like, exposing my insecurities. I'm somebody who can stuff their emotions for a while. If I'm putting myself in a place of vulnerability I'm not ready for. So I would say confronting it head on and just being honest about how you're feeling and what you think is missing. Like for us, as of recently, we had intimacy that was missing. And there's a lot of factors that play into that. You know, I'm pregnant. I'm moody. I sleep a lot. I mean, and he's working. He wasn't getting very much sleep. Our kids are, you know, off the chain more than lately, you know. So there's a lot of stresses that play into the way that things are. And I also think getting into a habit of like, okay, babe, when you come home, this is what you do. And then this is what I do. And then we go to sleep instead of keeping it, you know, spicy and fresh. So I don't know specifically what area you feel like you're drifting apart, but be transparent with each other, be open with each other, be honest with each other, and check your own perspective and make sure the reason that you're feeling that way isn't because of your lens and what you've been through. And then also put yourself in his shoes. Like, what is he going through right now? Am I just being selfish right now because I'm not seeing what he's going through? And what can I do on my part to make what I want come to pass? Because that's something that I've struggled with as well. As a woman, I like to be pursued. I don't really like... Well, it's not that I don't really like pursuing my husband, but it's harder for me because of what I've been through. Again, my lens. I was abused as a girl, and my husband found me when I was 17. So I didn't really have a lot of time to explore myself in that area as far as like my confidence when it comes to being sexy and stuff like that. So that also skewed my perspective. But I've asked the Lord for his help. And I think that's another thing. And I've taken responsibility for what is my fault. Because a man likes to be pursued too. Mm-hmm. And that's something as a lot of women don't really know what that looks like or don't know what that feels like, or maybe it's a perverted version of what it should be, but it's not as hard as we make it. We're in our heads a lot, and men don't really require as much as we act like.
Yeah. It's just like, here's the simple question you can ask your husband. What can I do to serve you? You know what I'm saying? Whether that's sexually or just generally, when a wife treats her husband like that, it's not so much it's a sexual turn on. It's like that heart is sexy. That heart, that woman that's like, because that's communicating submission, and it's also communicating her desire for you. I mean, you go back to Genesis, he told Eve, your desire is going to be to your husband. And that's been something that where there's lots of issues in the intimacy and communication in the marriage, that gets really twisted up. But when the heart is just like pure in, what can I do to serve you? How can I serve you? And then if you want to get creative on how, if you kind of have an idea of what he's asked for in the past or what he likes, then you can just go for it, you know?
And get some confidence.
That confidence is important, because when I met her, she seemed like she was extremely confident. And
I was.
But you also had two faces.
That's true.
Because you were highly confident in your persona and extremely insecure in yourself.
Yeah, that's true. When we first met, actually, I think I mentioned this in the first podcast, but when we first met, I was so insecure about the way that I looked without makeup that when I would go over to his house, I would like shower and then get out the shower and put makeup on before I walked out of the bathroom because I never wanted him to see me without it. And I think that had a lot to do with everything that was inside of my heart that I couldn't really release. And there was so much trauma and so much unresolved conflict in my heart when we met because I was so young and I never really knew any of the things that we have found out or he's pulled out of me, I suppose, over the past years, because he's shown me so much about myself and taught me so much about how to heal. And God has really given him wisdom on how to deal with me and how to handle me in the areas where I wasn't healed. And glory to God for that, because I wouldn't be the woman that I am today without him. Because behind closed doors, you know, when we argue and we fight, a lot of the trauma that I haven't confronted comes up. And he deals with me so gently in those moments that I have no choice but to fall apart and to confront the things that I wasn't willing to confront on my own. So...
And we can get into some of the details on that one in a little bit because it scales on so many levels. And this really is actually something that we've talked about a lot on this season.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, it scales. So we'll come back to that part in a little bit. Do we have another question right now or no?
No.
Okay.
I was just going to say one more thing.
Yeah.
One thing that this is gonna sound funny, but whatever. One thing that I've been trying to do more that's helped with my confidence when it comes to like pursuing my husband in a way that I'm not used to is I'll look at myself in the mirror and be like, you can do this, like it's fine. You're good. Like this is your husband. Like there should be no reason why you can't do this. And it's like a fear that stems from trauma. So once you deal with that and you look at yourself and you know that that's not what this is, it's a lot easier to get over the hurdle.
I don't know if it's the same for women when men aren't really acting in confidence, but there's, you know, I've felt very insecure as well. And mine comes from more of like, I don't feel like I'm living up to the man that I know that I could be or that I feel like I should be. And so that's a lot of times where my insecurity comes from. But this is why it's so important to know your identity in God, because when you know who you are as a son or a daughter of the Most High God, you have his name, his nature, his authority and power. And it's like, what else do you need? When you really get that, when you really have that revelation, then, and you're operating from that place, then that there's no other way to be but confident. But from a man's perspective, when the wife is always talking spit about how she looks and she's not content with things about herself and she's voicing that all the time, that's a turnoff. And so that's something that we had to talk about, because, you know, in our sex life, things weren't as good as they could be. And that's been one thing that for a while, it was really difficult for me to talk about sexual stuff. Like, we could do it, but talking about it for some reason is just like, it's not very sexy. So when we did have to, you know, why is this dwindling right now? Why is this not like it used to be? Okay, well, sometimes I didn't know exactly why, and I had to dig deep and find out what is my part. What am I doing differently? Why am I doing it differently? And that was one of the things that came up, was that I felt turned off a lot at this particular time this season because of how she was talking about herself and presenting herself. And I was like, that's not how I see you, but you're like convincing me.
Right. And that was right after I had, when was that after I had Kai or Zion? I don't know, but that was right after I had a child. And so I'm sure a lot of you can relate to just, I mean, the changes that your body goes through when you have a child is like so mind-blowing, and it takes time to adjust. And I want to also highlight that he was gentle with me expressing these things, because he knows how confident I can be, for one, and also he knows that it's because I had a child, his child. So I encourage women, like, when you feel like blah about yourself and you're just like, yeah, I don't feel sexy today, I don't feel cute, don't say that.
Tell your girlfriends.
Tell your girlfriends. Don't say it to where he can hear it, because it will affect your relationship. And sometimes, like, I know when I was saying it, I was just saying it because I just wanted to say it because it's something that I was feeling. But men take everything so literally. You know what I'm saying? But women just like to express how they're feeling. And I felt like that a lot. And until I started taking better care of myself, going to the gym, prioritizing myself better, and finally getting a hold of my health and my body, I really wasn't confident in myself, and I really was insecure. But I finally was able to get over that hurdle and do what I was able to do to make myself feel better about myself. So just remember that your man is always listening when you're talking about yourself, because it's not wrong to feel the things that you feel about yourself. You know, you have a right to feel that way, and most of us are just insecure to a certain level, but there's a time and a place, and it's not in front of a man.
Yeah, that's good advice. But at the same time, as a man, that's something that I could have reacted to better. I didn't have to be affected by what she was saying about herself, but that was a weak area for me. So there's still, you could take responsibility as the man. If your wife is talking like that, learn from this.
And also, sometimes it's a cry for help. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there's plenty times where I dress up and get cute and he don't say nothing. And I'm just like, okay, so do I not look cute still? Does he still think I'm cute? Am I, like, women are very much, we need affirmation. Like, we just do, especially when we're making an effort in our appearance. Like, we're such beings about beauty. Like, we care about exterior appearance to a certain extent. That's just the way God made us to be. And as a man, if you're hearing your woman say stuff about herself, like, until she learns to get herself together, do what you can. You know, send her messages and be like, you know what, you're so beautiful the way that you are. Because men have this way about thinking about stuff and not saying it, because I know he thinks I'm pretty, but I need you to tell me. You know what I'm saying? And I need you to tell me a lot. And sometimes I need you to tell me more than other times, because sometimes I don't feel the way I do in certain seasons as I do in others. Especially if you know your wife has had children and has gone through changes in her body or has had drastic weight. You know, like, there's so many factors that play into a woman's security, but you can play a big part in a positive or a negative way, and just be gentle.
Yeah. These are the intricacies. This is advice. But when it gets to the very bottom of it, when you have a man that's secure in his identity and a woman that's secure in her identity, these issues don't matter. in reality. But because we aren't always operating and thinking like that, sometimes that's revealed, and it's like the foundation of our existence. And other times there's things, life happens, and emotions, and you start believing lies about yourself, and about you start letting lies in. And these are just some advice that if you're dealing with a mate that has insecurities, they're obviously believing in something that's not true, right? But these are ways that you can help them and be gentle with them and love them through it.
Right. And it's also depending on the season, like for me in this season, I cut my hair off. I'm pregnant. I took out my face piercing. God has really been stripping me of a lot of stuff that would make me feel beautiful on a regular basis. And I think he's doing it to prepare me for this child. But in this season, my husband knows, like, I've been struggling. And he knows that. But I know that he knows that, and he pacifies that well when he thinks to. And just like remind your husband where you're at. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't be fake about it, because everyone goes through different seasons. Like, we cut our hair, like we gain weight, we lose weight, we have unhealthy habits. Like, life goes on. But being transparent and being like, listen, babe, I really don't like my hair, or I really don't like this about myself. And just being transparent, but not like nailing it over and over. Oh, I hate this about myself. I hate this, we
just told him not to say that.
Yeah, well, there's a difference. There's a difference between being transparent and coming to your mate as like somebody that you're confiding in versus complaining about how you look.
Yes, perfect. I couldn't have said it any better. There's a difference between complaining about your appearance and confiding in your mate about your insecurity. And confiding in your mate about that insecurity is so important, because I don't know if this like that for like this with all men, but for me it's like, my wife thinks, does he think I'm pretty? And if she would voice that, like, in my mind, I'm like, did I ever tell you you're not?
Right, but then I
mean, I told you, like, you're still pretty, like,
yeah, but
you're still pretty.
But as a woman, you go through stuff, and it's like
also sometimes when you want to get the response from your husband, and it's like, there's things that you've done to your appearance that I don't prefer,
right?
But you did it because you like it,
right?
And it's like, you can get all dressed up and put makeup on and a dress, and I'd be fine with you with no makeup, just naked. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but the way that men and women think is so different, which is why it's so important to talk about these things, because, like, regardless of how he sees me, it's about how I see myself in that time frame. That is what I'm dealing with. And so I know this stuff about him. Like, I know he likes me better with no makeup. I know he hated my face piercing. I know he doesn't like short hair. Like, I know all this stuff. But a lot of this stuff I did for different reasons. But at the end of the day, a woman still needs to feel pursued. That's a huge one. That's a huge one. I'm talking about consistently pursued. Like, date me like how we were before we got married, because there's so much intimacy and so much building of like emotions and feelings that dies away when you get married. And so when I wake up to a text from my husband and he's like, "Hey, beautiful," I'm like, "Oh, yeah, wow, I'm beautiful." Like, you know what I mean? So it really does add to the relationship, and I think, again, it just comes back to transparency. Like, where are you at, woman? Like, as a woman, where are you at? Are you confident in this season? Do you not need any affirmations? Do you need him to pursue you more in this area or that area? Like, just be upfront and real. Because a lot of the times we get mad at them because they don't do what we want them to do, and we didn't say nothing.
Yeah. And then for the men also, what can you do to serve your wife? You might not have to ask that question. Maybe it's a good idea to ask. It probably is a good idea to ask. But in general, like...
Ask the Lord.
Yeah, ask the Lord. But in general, you should be thinking like that. What can I do to serve my wife? Because, you know, the scripture doesn't only say that the woman should be submissive to the husband, which is true. And the man is the head, and the... Like, even though I'm the head, she represents me, and I protect her. I take the hit for things. There's a reason why the man is the head, and I'm still learning how to do that, because when I was growing up, I don't think I really saw, like, I don't think I ever really had a good image of what that looked like until maybe a few years ago. I got some examples, but still, unless you're living in a house with the father, mother, children, and watching how they live, it's really hard to see what that looks like. And so God has been showing me and training me and teaching me, and I'm still learning. I still have a long way to go, but that there's a reason that it's set like that. And not only does the scripture tell that the woman should be submissive to the husband, it says submit yourselves to each other as well. So men, don't forget that. You're also supposed to submit to your wife. So what that looks like is humility. What can I do to serve you? Like, the greatest submission that you can have for someone is to lay your life down for them. And that's how God calls men to love their wives. Love them like Christ loved the church, that he laid his life down.
That's good.
So it's even easier probably to die for something or someone than to live for something or someone. But it should be in our minds constantly. How can I love my wife? How can I lay my life down for her? How can I serve her? And that's really how we should be thinking. That's the humble way to think, is that the world doesn't revolve around you. It's not about you. And it's not about making them an idol and serving them as if they're your God either.
Right. It's balance.
It's the balance. It's like those are both perversions of what this humility and service and submission is. When you're so content and confident in who you are, then you don't need anything from anybody else. And you can love, and you can love. That's
that really goes for any relationship. If you've got a relationship that's messed up, you haven't served that person, and you're thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
If you got a friend that you feel like isn't doing you right, why don't you think about what they need instead of what you need?
Only by pride comes contention. That's the truth. Yeah, that's the truth. That's one of the things in the Bible that's like, this is such a fundamental truth, and we miss it.
And when we argue, sometimes he says that, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so prideful.
It's only by pride that there's contention. Only by pride. There is no other. You can't point back to anything else as the root of contention except for pride. There's other things that can play into it, but the root of contention is pride.
And even when we went to marriage counseling, we literally went to marriage counseling, and our counselors came to the conclusion that we were just both being prideful. We wanted what we wanted, and we weren't getting it, and so we were just wrapped up in ourselves.
And frustrated with the other person.
Right.
And then they were like,
you guys sound just like each other. And
we're like, what are you talking about? Have you been listening to us?
Right.
Yeah, you're both prideful.
Yeah. And that's what it really was. And it really took other people telling us that to be like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take much to get wrapped up in yourself. And especially in the world we live in, if you talk to the wrong people about your relationship and you're around people of this world, they'll be the first to tell you, oh, your man you should leave him alone. Like he's wrong for that or what, women can be really dangerous when it comes to that kind of stuff if they're not grounded in Jesus, because it can be so easy to feel like you deserve better or you can get better or he's not, the list goes on and on and on. But at the end of the day, you don't deserve anything. You deserve to go to hell. So I hate hearing women say that, because at the end of the day, we don't deserve anything. And for us to be in a place where we think that somebody else isn't giving what we need when chances are we're not giving what they need, it's a recipe for disaster. So be careful.
If we don't have any questions right now, do we?
No.
Okay.
No questions. Just a statement that I really like.
What was the statement?
She says the Bible. This is what I was thinking when you guys are talking. Bible says for women to respect their husbands and for husbands to love their wives. So
that's good.
The two sides of the coin that I think women have a hard time.
Yeah, we definitely have a hard time respecting.
But like respect, like is the thing. Like you can love me all you want. If you don't respect me,
but we don't really necessarily understand that either, because that's not what is for us.
Yeah, you're not wired that way.
It really takes time. It's just the same way that men aren't wired to always be like, oh, you're so beautiful, so this and so that. Like you really have to learn what that looks like, because
respect for a man is almost it's something that we're wired to see the world and operate in it through a hierarchy of respect. And
we don't know nothing about that.
Women don't do that. We
just base that off of how pretty the next girl is. Like we don't know nothing about that.
So pride is a big deal. And I alluded to an issue that we would talk about, and this is something that we've worked through. It's taken a lot of communication and patience and honest, transparent discussions with each other to get through some of these issues. But this one in particular, and it's very admirable of you to be vulnerable to talk about this.
What are we about to talk about?
Delusions.
Okay.
I was gonna mention it when I was talking with
Yeah, I remember.
Who was it? I forget.
I think it was Julio.
Yeah, and then I asked you. I think we were live, and I asked you over text, and you're like, "No,
I want to be there for that." Yeah.
So this is huge. So like I do the book of the week. Did I do last?
You didn't have a podcast last week.
Yeah, but the last one with Emanuela, did I do a book of the week?
No, I don't think so.
I didn't see the last one.
I'm slipping. You were live for that one.
Oh no! It was Emma.
Yeah.
Well, so you did have a book of the week.
I did. Okay, good.
But you didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Oh. Okay. Well, I've been slacking on this book of the week, and I guess you could say I'm still slacking today because I already did this one. But it's just so on point with what we're talking about. So I actually highlighted a few lines that I wanted to read. This is Delusion and Mass Delusion by Just Mirlu. And he's got another book called The Rape of the Mind. And I haven't read through that whole one yet. And I'm not all the way through this one. But my dad read The Rape of the Mind. He said it was really good. But this guy's really awesome, man. He was a Jew in, what was it, Switzerland or one of those countries as Germany was taking over the world. And he's got he changed his name, and he's got some really great insight and practical and experiential insight. So there's some lines I wanted to read off here. I definitely would suggest picking this book up. We are constantly swayed and subjected to the convincing thinking of others. The way that we interact with reality and the way that our thoughts go, it's like we don't have total control over our thoughts all the time. It takes some serious self-control to be able to control your thoughts all the time, right? And to make sure that you're thinking correctly and truthfully and honestly. But where do thoughts even come from? Like, there's plenty of times where you'll have a thought, and if you ask yourself, where did that even come from? You have no idea where it came from. You know, could it be spirits whispering in your ear? Could it be a biological process that brought a thought up, or an emotion brought a thought up? Or like, thoughts come from all kind of places, and ordering correctly, dealing with those thoughts is so important. The realization that our own open mind and brain are not entirely our own is a tragic one. We think and we try to become conscious of the world around us, but we're not independent in our reasonable existence. I'm skipping around here, so I just thought these were really great lines in here. I got a few more. So this is going into thought and delusion. Many adequately functioning people who show too much concern with themselves often conclude that the treatment accorded to them does not do them justice. This common correctable aberration we refer to as conceit or self-centered behavior, pride. The delusions seem to persevere as an impenetrable mental armor. They defined the delusion as a specific change in the thinking process in which self-centered evaluations turned into rigid delusions as a result of pathological processes of the brain. So if I could just melt that down. So a delusion is like, it's believing a lie. And sometimes what we could do is we could start to tell ourselves lies, believe those lies, and then we have a whole system of lies that we see the world through, right? And for some people, that becomes their armor, their mental armor. And so anything that challenges that delusion actually can't map onto the way that they think at all. And when you go that deep in building a world of delusions, so first, certain facts won't have any effect on you, and you're not going to be able to have honest and real conversations with other people because you're not living in the same world that they are. Beyond these pathological thinking processes, there is also the formation of delusions due to the impact of emotions, namely the affective delusions. When the intensity of certain emotions reaches abnormal proportions, the thinking processes change. So not only can you develop delusions in order to protect yourself, but if you're so overcome by a particular emotion, that can also tweak processes in your brain that cause you to believe a delusion and see the world through that delusion. Thinking is that process which enables us to come to terms with reality. Through trial and error, the subject gradually comes closer to the object, and both subject and object undergo change as a result of this interrelationship. We like to impress ourselves with words and thoughts and then hide behind those very words. Oh, I got another one. A delusion is a conviction that is arrived at not illogically, but alogically. It is a false premise, but it is more than that. If it suits me to adopt a false premise, it suits me doubtfully to justify it and hide its origins. That's really good right there. So delusions aren't illogical. They're not like It's not like trying to believe something that doesn't make any sense. It's proving to yourself something that doesn't make sense. It's searching for the correct information or telling yourself the right information for you to believe a certain thing. Right? And it says, it is more than that. If it suits me to believe a delusion, a particular delusion, then it will not suit me to justify it and I'm sorry. It won't suit me if I don't, like, how do I reword this into English? So it suits me doubly to justify it and to hide its origins. So I messed that up. So I would reinforce that delusion with more lies, basically. And I would also hide the origin of that delusion so it can't be traced back. And so this is something that we've dealt with in our marriage on a personal level. But this is also something that has played out in our culture. And I think I mentioned this on that one with Julio. Jordan Peterson talks about this very deeply, and it's incredible. He put me on to Fyodor Dostoevsky, he's an incredible novelist, but he's got a book called The Possessed or Demons. And the idea behind that is that these ideas, which the analogy was, they were demons that would come and take possession of people's ways of thinking, and inevitably it infected the entire culture. And that's how you got the Soviet Union. This is before the Soviet Union. So he was prophesying this, and it came to pass. And so this is the same. This plays out on different levels, right? But in a marriage, and in relationships in general, when you tell yourself a lie, then you start having to tell yourself more lies to justify that lie. Eventually, you build an entire world that you live in that nobody else lives in. And you have secluded yourself. But if these delusions only are held in certain categories of your life, then they hide until they come up. And this is one of the areas that we had trouble with. You want to punch in on that?
Yeah, so I think for me, some of the things that I have had delusions over have been because I think I was raised around people that have had similar delusions. For an example, I'm not sure exactly what topics that my husband and I would speak about, but certain topics would trigger me and cause me to get into a place where I just was defensive and I would just want to end the conversation. Because, like he said, I had reached a certain level of emotion that was too overwhelming. And so I would just kind of cut off the conversation. Both of my parents kind of did that growing up, and they never really had open communication with each other. And I didn't even know that that's something that I didn't even like recognize that, growing up as a child, until it played out in my own marriage. That's one of the things that I think I have had some delusions with when it comes to like feeling like I'm wrong and getting defensive instead of confronting that I'm wrong, I would put up a wall to where he couldn't get in. And
there at that point it was like there's nothing that we can talk about at this point.
Right. And I didn't even know it was that.
She had no, like, and that's the worst part about when you start lying to yourself and believing your lie, you get to a point where you don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it would get to a point where I would just be like, I don't even know what we're talking about. I don't know what I said. Like I was so focused, like unconsciously focused on protecting myself that I would just say whatever I needed to say to just get him off my back. Like it didn't really matter.
And it would escalate too, because in a lot of situations, it started with me saying something that wasn't even attacking or not even necessarily saying you were wrong with something.
Right.
Sometimes it was just something that there was a difference and she took it as I'm attacking her.
Or even, I think for a while, my husband was raised in a family that's very vocal. Like his mother taught him to talk through his emotions. She spoke to him about her emotions. Like everything was always upfront, open on the table. I was raised in the opposite household where I never talked to my parents about anything. My parents never talked to each other about anything, and they still don't. So that's partially the culture that I was raised in. The Japanese culture is very closed. They don't express a lot of emotion, and I think that has a little bit to do with it. But the only emotion that I ever saw my father express was anger. So whenever Zach would show any type of expression that wasn't happy, and it was like his voice was raising, maybe because he was passionate about what we were talking about, like it would trigger me. And I would just shut down and feel attacked and try to hide, because in my childhood, I witnessed a lot of yelling and throwing and just a lot of trauma that obviously hadn't been dealt with. And so it wasn't even necessarily him. Like he didn't have to say something that was wrong. He could say something in a tone that I thought was too much. And it, like, that was it for me. It would just shut me down. And that has nothing to do with, how he necessarily meant to say it, but he was raised in a home where like they're Spanish, you know what I'm saying? They're loud and
we just talk loud.
They talk loud, they laugh like that. My childhood, I never remember my whole family sitting down and laughing. Ever. I never remember that. All I remember is us all sitting at the table, and my dad would have like a certain stature about himself that was very closed off, and my mom would always be upset because he didn't do something right or he wasn't eating her food or whatever the case was, and it was just silent. So I've never had somebody in my childhood that had the personality of Zach, which is very loud when he wants to be passionate. Somebody who's not afraid to express emotion. And even now, like it still kind of puts me in a place of being uncomfortable, and I can feel walls going up when he talks about how he feels for a certain amount of time. Like it's like I check out because like I don't know what to do, because I'm just like, this is like so weird. Like I don't know how to receive after a certain point, because this is something that's completely new to me. And I remember my mother would express how she felt to my father, and he would say absolutely nothing and walk away. Like every single time. I never saw them speak about an issue in front of us that was ever resolved. I remember them arguing. My mom would go to her room and cry. My dad would be sitting at the dinner table, and I would be the one to intercede. And I would be like, Dad, you just did this, and this to her. you shouldn't have done that. And he wouldn't say anything to me either, but he would listen. So even then, when I would try and be bold and I would try to come in the middle of their relationship, which wasn't my place, but I have always had a boldness about me, even as a child. And I would go and I would try to reconcile because I've always hated confrontation. And being married to Zach has really transformed me when it comes to confrontation. And I'm so thankful for that because it's very important. And I don't ever want my children to go through the traumas that I've had to go through, being that they've seen us fight. They've seen us have confrontation. They've seen us, work things out. They've sat on the couch while we've argued. And I think there's a certain extent of that that's healthy because I've never seen that. And even when we do talk about our emotions, like I said, like I have a very hard time expressing my emotions to a certain extent because I've never seen my mother do that ever. And usually when I get to a point with her, even as an adult, there's a point where she'll do the same thing I do to him. We'll get deep into conversation, my mother and I, and she'll cut it off. And she'll hang up the phone because she doesn't know how to do that because she's been with my dad for, I don't even know, maybe 30, 40 years. And so like the trauma that I went through as a child, I never was able to deal with. For one, because we got married so young and I've never been around anybody that brought out these things in me. So all that being said, like I hated when he would be like, you're being delusional right now. And I'd be like, I'd be ready to smack him. Like no woman wants to hear that. You might as well call me crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I meant it in the most technical way.
Right.
It wasn't an insult.
But to me, it was because I didn't understand it, for one. And I knew I was being delusional, but I didn't understand why. And most of the time, delusion comes from trauma. And it also comes from repeated habits that are unhealthy, that haven't been broken. Like me speaking to him for hours about my emotions. Like I still can't do that. Like most of the time when we argue and he's the one who wants to sit down and talk about our emotions. And for a long time, I would feel so uncomfortable. Or even still sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I can't do that right now. Mm-hmm. and I'll admit that it's because of trauma or because it's just like so foreign.
Yeah. And there's actually something that works pretty well for us. I think we learned this from Steve and Amy McCrory. They had a rule. It was something like at 9 o'clock. Don't talk about anything serious after 9 o'clock. I think that was their time. And we were like, that's not a bad idea. Rule. So we've employed that. We don't really talk about anything heavy after like 10.
We really don't. And when we start, I be using it like, yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll be like, hey, I don't know if this is too heavy or not. You let me know. I start talking.
And most of the time I'm like, yeah, no.
And then there for me, heavy talk isn't emotion. It's planning and going over details.
And that's what I like to do.
I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's 10:30. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. Talking about what we're going to do on Saturday. I cannot do this right now.
And that's how he was. And that's just how he is. And so it took me a long time, like a very long time to come to terms with what is wrong with me and what I've come out of and why I act the way that I do. And it took a lot of humility because it really hurt and it still hurts thinking about why I'm like that. Because my parents don't know what freedom looks like in that area. But I'm really thankful because I have children and I've been blessed with children. I'm able to give them the tools to communicate. And I want them to see what that looks like so they won't have to deal with this trauma because it's a hard one. It's a really hard one. I'm talking about it took probably 3 years of consistently coming up against my own self And that's a hard place for anybody to be. You know, when you got something wrong with you and you don't even know, like because it's trauma, I genuinely couldn't understand why I was doing what I was doing. But I knew I was doing it. But I never wanted to dig into the depths of why I was like this.
Yeah. So I want to talk about some of the signs and symptoms, because for a while I had no idea that that's what it was. I didn't know where it came from, why it was happening. All I knew was that we'd have a contentious situation or a disagreement on something. We would start to talk about it, and then all of a sudden she would start misrepresenting me, either about things that I literally just said or about how she thinks I'm presenting it or how I feel or how I am.
Attacked. So I would make it seem like you were attacking me when you were really just talking to me.
And I'm like, what are you talking about?
And I believed every bit of it. Like, I was deep in delusion because I just wanted to protect myself from him.
And it was so frustrating because I'm like, we literally just talked about this and you said A, right?
Right.
We get down through the conversation a little bit and she's saying B. And it's like A and B do not go together. They can't exist in the same world. I'm like, how did you just say this and now you're saying this?
And I remember doing these things.
And then and it was like,
it was bad.
It would, at that point, it was a fracture. Like, in to not break her brain. No, that didn't happen. What do you mean it didn't happen? You just said this.
Right. And then it would just escalate.
Yeah.
It just would escalate because then what he was doing is exposing my trauma. And my brain would literally not let
it was
him
her mental
go there.
armor. That delusions were her mental armor.
It was crazy.
And so I had no idea what we were dealing with here.
Yeah.
I was like...
It took a lot of time.
And so for me, what it felt like was... what you're doing here, either you don't know you're doing it and that's a big problem, or you're psychologically abusing me and that's a big problem. Either way, we got a big problem here.
Yeah, and that's the end of the conversation that we would always get to. He would always be like, are you doing this on purpose? And I would be like, no, but I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just like, can we just like end the conversation?
And I'm just like dumbfounded. Like, I feel like I was in a Gestapo interrogation room.
Yeah,
like,
and I could see that I was driving him insane.
I was like, I thought, am I losing my mind? Like, did we not just, did this not really just happen the way that I just experienced it? Like, we're the only two people here, and you're telling me what I just saw and experienced and heard with my own senses did not just happen. Am I crazy? Or are you crazy?
Yeah.
Or are you like manipulating me? What is happening right now? And it was bad.
It was bad. And even before that, there was another delusion that I had. But I can't remember. I think it was something along the lines of that he was going to eventually leave me. But I didn't have any reason to really think that because he, you know, we didn't have any issues in our marriage, or like he never voiced wanting to leave me in our entire marriage. But do you remember that?
Vaguely.
I remember one time we had an argument and it came back down to the delusion that I was in. And at the end of the argument, I was like, you should just leave me. Like, just leave me. And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm not going anywhere. And it's almost like it's like I was trying to get him to leave me, and that's from the trauma of being adopted.
She was trying to prove her delusion.
Yeah, because my delusion was that because I was adopted at birth, that everyone was going to leave me that loves me. That was probably the hardest one. And I didn't even know it. Like, that's the thing about delusion that is so scary, that you're literally living in a world that you think that you know and you don't even see, like, the truth. And I've been through trauma in my life that has brought these delusions up, but I know people that have been through way worse than what I've been through. And so I'm sure I'm not the only one with delusion, because the way that they make you, like, the whole time you think you're protecting yourself, and that's the most terrifying part, because if Zach wasn't the man that he is, he could have left me, because I was pretty much shoving him out the door.
And then you would have been really messed up, because you would have proven your delusion true and went out in the world.
Exactly. I even remember that night, and I remember, like, expecting him to actually leave. And, like, we weren't even fighting about anything that would have caused him to want to leave me. But I just kept being like, just leave. Like, I kept saying, because I'm so messed up, like, just leave me. And then I was like, fine, if you're not going to leave me, then I'm just going to leave. Delusion is so dangerous. It is so dangerous. And if you got married at a young age, or at an age where you hadn't had time to confront your traumas, or even if you're older and you haven't had time to confront your trauma, like, please do it. Please. Like, and it's not something that you can do on your own. You really have to pray. Because I remember being in my prayer closet, crying out to the Lord, being like, what is wrong with me? Like, why do I keep having arguments with my husband? And I don't even know, like, what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. Like, something is wrong with me. Like, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't even get into my brain, to my own brain, to figure out where the trauma was coming from, because it was so deep. It was so deeply rooted. All that stuff that we just discussed was from birth and from my childhood. Like, that was 27 years ago. Like, I was so lost in it that I couldn't even see it. And so that's why it's so important to confront your trauma, honestly, and hopefully premarital counseling, or, you know, individual counseling, whatever it is that you have to do to get to the bottom of what you've been through, the things that you've experienced as a child, because it will show up in your marriage every single time. Even, let's see. Hold on. I just thought of something. I just forgot it. Hold on.
Can I punch in more, you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
So another thing is, she mentioned that our kids have seen us fight and argue, which is true. And you might be like, I don't think it's a good thing to fight in front of your kids. And here's the thing, like, from what she just said, like, growing up in a household where there was no fight, no communication, like, there was nothing, like, what's worse, to see your parents never have a disagreement and work through it, or to see your parents disagreeing and arguing?
Definitely.
And
what I saw.
There's probably bad on both
probably
sides. Like, there's a balance, right?
Yeah.
And so
we keep that balance when things get out of control.
We try to keep that balance.
But we also
there's been times where we have just like.
But we also have rules in place when we argue. For one, we can't leave. Neither one of us can leave, and that's from when I used to always try to be the one to leave him because of that trauma from when I was adopted. Like, that was my defense mechanism when we were dating. We would get in arguments and I would literally get in my car and leave. Like, every single time that we would argue, I'd just be like, you know what? I'm leaving. And I would just leave. And I subconsciously had to prove to myself that he would always come back. And he always did. But that's how messed up. Like, I could have lost him. You know what I'm saying?
And I was like, I don't like.
But he chased me.
People that know me might think that I like confrontation. I really don't like confrontation. I just have a very low threshold of what I will let slide. But it actually is something I don't want and I don't like. But the way that I'm set up, my principles will make me confront things that I do not want to. And so having disagreements with people that I'm close with, I have to do everything that I can do to make sure that I did whatever I could do to work it out. And so I would chase her down so that I could make sure that I said what I could say and I did what I can do.
And that
and
was
if
so
you're still not cool, if you're still not willing to work this out, then
But that's what kept me with him, because I had never seen that before. Like, that's what kept me so intrigued with him. My dad would never. My dad would leave. Like, walk out the door and not say anything. He would never chase my mom down. And I know that's all she wanted. So when he was like that with me, I was like, oh yeah, I like him.
So we've definitely lost it in front of our kids.
Mm-hmm. But we've done a really good
rare.
job about.
Yeah, that's rare. But we generally do, when we have disagreements, we let our kids see, because we've learned, and we don't always do this right, but we've learned how to have arguments and work through them in a way that works for us. We've developed a set of rules that we're just not going to cross.
Right.
And we remind each other of things, because I know what her triggers are.
Yeah.
And when I start raising my voice, and like when I start talking about stuff I care about, like right here, I'm like, this is how I'm talking. And it's not that I'm mad at you or pissed off or I'm trying to yell at you. I'm not yelling.
Yeah, but see,
and to her,
even
that's
right
yelling.
now, I'm feeling like,
her, that's yelling. And I'm like, I'm just talking. What are you talking about? I'm just talking. We're just talking right now. What's going on? She's like, I don't like when you yell at me. I'm not yelling. And then I start to like raise my voice because I'm...
And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm done. I shut down.
And so I'd be like, look, if I start raising my voice, it's not intentionally to make you feel any type of way. Tell me, and I'll try to bring it back down.
And he usually starts by saying something like, I'm on your side.
Yes, that's
I
another
love you.
thing.
I care about you. What, like before
Because
we get into the depths of an argument.
when we first started to realize, when she first humbled herself and acknowledged that she has a tendency to go into delusions in confrontation, we developed a system, and because I was like, I don't know what I could do to help you. And so we had to
pray. We just prayed. I told him the only thing you can really do is pray, because I don't know what the heck is wrong with me.
But one of the things that has helped, and I don't think sometimes I don't even have to do this anymore, but like every single time, I always had to start with, I'm not attacking. I want to tell you something, but I'm not attacking you. This doesn't change how I feel about you. I'm not pissed off at you. I'm not angry with you. I just want to talk about something that's been on my mind, and I don't want you to put walls up. I want you to try to understand where I'm coming from, because I love you and I want us to work.
And it worked. And most of the time it really did work. And I could feel the walls going down. And that the fact that he's able to understand me to the extent where he's like, okay, this is what she's going through. These are the traumas that she's dealing with. And so I'm going to change the way that I am with her so that we can get through what we need to get through. Like, that's huge.
And I don't have to do that.
He doesn't.
But because I love her and I want this marriage to work, I'm using every resource that I can to get our communication to the best place that it can be. And so that's one of the tools. As far as our kids go, I think it's really important that, like I said, they've seen us flip out a few times, but that's not very often. But what they do see, when they see their parents argue and have disagreements, they also see how we work through it and how we reconcile and how we apologize to each other for how we went wrong in the discussion or argument. And there's been plenty of times where I've even went to my sons and I said, I got really mad And the way I talked to mommy was not nice. And I
Yeah.
should not have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her I was sorry. And I'm sorry that I acted like that because I was a bad example. And this is not how a man should treat his wife.
And it's crazy because when God makes your husband, like even from him doing simple things, like after we get into an argument, he always has to hug me and kiss me. And that's like weird to me because my parents never did that. Like I think I saw my parents kiss maybe like a handful of times in my life, but I know my mom longed for it. So for him to go through arguments and stuff like that with me, and that's how he has to close out, like, it's just crazy how God took my trauma and he created a man that does the reverse of what traumas I went through.
That's funny because I do that for you.
Yeah, well, I need it, but I've never told you though that I necessarily needed that. But
yeah, I didn't even know that.
It's something that I could never voice that I needed. It's something that my soul needs because of what I've seen.
That's interesting. I think the reason why I do that, and even with men, when I have an issue with the man and we reconcile, I always shake his hand. And I think that's to, like, when you shake someone's hand, your hand is open, mm-hmm. and it's extended, mm-hmm. and it's symbolic, but it's gotta be psychological too.
Definitely,
and it's gotta be
for a man. Oh, definitely.
To where it's like it's communicating something important.
Yeah.
And so that's. And I don't know why I do. Like, I don't think I actually thought all this through before.
It's just
not right
how
now.
God made you. And that's what I think is so amazing. Like, be encouraged, woman, when you find your husband, or if you've found your husband, that he's literally made for you. But it really takes you showing him how you're made for you to see how he was really made for you.
I have changed so much through our marriage.
Yes.
It's crazy.
It's been so amazing to watch because I know that the ways that he's changed are because of the way that I am, because of how he had, like, for an example, when I met him, like, he would pop off on, like, people, like strangers, and like he had a temper about him that he doesn't have anymore. He's a lot softer. He's a lot more gentle. He's a lot more careful with his footing when he's around certain people or women, or he's just so much more conscious of his being than he was when I met him. And I know that's because of me, because of how soft I am with him and how soft I need him to be with me, because of the traumas that I've been through and because of the love that I need to be fulfilled and to grow. And so I just want to encourage somebody who's watching about their spouse or their future spouse, that really is the person for you. Like, God really knitted him in his mother's womb for me. And I know that so, like, I know that more than anything, especially when we argue, especially when he does stuff that, like, we just found out he didn't know that he said he did that for me, but I never asked him to do that for me. But he knows to do that for me anyway. And I just think that that's so amazing because it's just proof that we're meant to be together.
Do we have any questions?
A lot of comments, no questions.
Oh, lots of comments. A couple highlights.
You're asking me that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I can't. I don't know if I can scroll back up. Let me see 1 second here. Boom.
Thanks for coming through tonight, guys, and dropping some comments in there. You know, I've said this before. I couldn't care less about the like button and subscribing and all that stuff. for the sake of clout and like getting my name out there. Like I've said this a few times already. I would not have chosen to do a podcast and put my life out here vulnerable for everybody to see. I'm a very private person, right? But this is something that I've been called to. This is something that God has put on my heart.
And I'm the same way. I don't really like being on video like
I like to have conversations with people, not in front of everybody on earth.
Right.
Like I would like having private conversations, deep conversations with people. Not on the camera, not with the camera facing me. I don't like that. I don't do this because I like this. I do this because it's important. And so the only time I would ever say drop some comments in here is because I want to interact with everybody who's watching. Mm-hmm. I want to actually have interactions with y'all. The only reason I would say hit the like button is if it actually mattered. I don't know if it matters. I don't know if it does or not. Or subscribe. I don't know if it really matters. I'm not convinced that's gonna do anything. The share, now that will actually do something. I think that if you share this podcast, this episode especially, that it could touch people's lives. And so that's the only reason I would say to share. But don't like the video. Just share it.
And also, thank you for watching and allowing us to be open with you about the things that we've gone through. Because a lot of people don't like listening to other people being transparent because it points out their flaws or the areas where they're not transparent.
Yeah, and if you're sitting with your husband or wife watching this, don't look at each other and give the eye like, did you hear that? Are you paying attention right now? Don't do that. Don't do that.
One of the comments actually is kind of like that. It's talked about how they said they're glad I said talking about respect and love, and that it goes both ways. And it's funny because the comment I was making was that respect and love are mutually exclusive like concepts. For a man doesn't feel loved unless he's respected, and a woman doesn't feel respected unless she's loved. That's what I was really getting at.
That's good. Where are we at? I think my sister has a question right there.
Where?
Is prayer the only thing that helped with that, with delusion?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll answer her for that.
Okay.
I think it depends on the delusion. And I think it depends on how honest you are with yourself about the delusion. Because for me, it took us arguing over and over and over and over and over and over
to even
for me to
expose
get
the delusion.
fed. I just got fed up with myself. Like I got so fed up. And it took a while for me to know that it was me and not him. Because when you're in delusion, you're trying to protect yourself. So you're convincing yourself it's not you. So it really depends on how deep is the delusion. Like, do you feel that you're delusional in any sense of a way? Then pray. Because you can't see the delusion and only God will be the one to reveal it. And it has to be in the right timing when you're willing and humble to be exposed.
Yeah, humility is the number one.
But the timing is also, I think the timing is also very, very important, because not only do you have to be in a place where you're willing to be exposed as somebody who's A, delusional, B, who's been causing problems in your marriage for reasons you don't know, and C, you have to be okay with whoever's exposing the delusion. Because most likely it is your husband or somebody that's extremely close to you. So if at any point in this video I've said anything to you that you can relate to and you're curious about if it's something that you relate because it's a delusion, I would encourage you to pray, because God will expose it and he will heal you from it. Absolutely. And don't, my only advice is, don't get disgusted with yourself. Don't get so fed up with yourself that you just throw the towel in and you're just like, whatever about it. Because I was there for a hot minute. I was like, you know what? I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why this man is with me because I'm driving him crazy. Like, I don't know. Like, I got so disgusted with myself and so frustrated. And if I would have leaned any farther that way, I don't know what I would have done or where I would have been. But, like, nip it in the bud. Like, go before the Lord. Like, get on your hands and knees and cry out because it's painful. This stuff is painful, you guys. Like, confronting trauma is not something for the weak, but it's something for believers because God is a healer. And so if we want to be healed and he's trying to expose a place in you that's not healed, like, it's only him that's doing it. It doesn't matter what it looks like or how uncomfortable it is. Like, when I was feeling like I was the problem in our marriage and when I was feeling like we weren't getting anywhere in our marriage, I'm thankful that it was him to expose it because it could have gone a lot of other ways if it was somebody else. So,
and it was also very important for me the way that I exposed it.
Right.
So look, if you're feeling like when you have confrontations with your mate, and it seems like y'all are in different worlds, that is one of the probably the most glaring symptoms that I've seen that somebody has a delusion.
And I used to hate when he would say that because it would make me feel delusional. And I didn't even understand it, but I could feel it. So don't get frustrated with what's being said. It's only for you to be exposed. And in order for the darkness to come out, the light has to expose it.
Mm-hmm. And so the way to expose it, so that delusion is a defense mechanism. So you have to get on the other side of that wall.
Yeah.
Which means you can't be the opponent. You have to be the protector. So if you go and climb that, get inside of that wall and say, hey, I'm here to protect you, then they can shift their trust over to you instead of the delusion. And then how you expose that delusion and show them, hey, if I can anthropomorphize the delusion, this guy's not here to help you. He's actually hurting you. I'm here to help you. So I want to ask you a series of questions to understand more about what's going on here, because I don't think that this delusion is here to help. And it takes a lot of working through things and a lot of thoughtfulness.
And a lot of patience.
Lots of patience.
Because it's up to the person that has the delusion.
Yes. And there's been times where I was so close. I scaled the wall. I was in there. And
I was like, psych.
A couple of hours in and we're so close. And then it was like, I got sucked out into the other world. And I'm like, dang it.
Yeah, because another thing is like, I think in my subconscious, I could feel him getting closer. And I was so scared that somebody was going to know me to the level that he was about to know me. I would push him out.
But the funny thing is, like, I already knew that deep level. And she
but it's so crazy, though, because...
And sometimes I knew it before she knew it.
Most of the time. And that's frustrating as a person when somebody else knows you better than yourself about things that hurt so deeply. So have patience with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Mm-hmm. Everybody has some sort of delusion from some sort of a trauma. And I think being okay with that word for me, because like...
Not a great word to use, by the way.
Yeah. Men, don't be like, oh my God.
Especially if...
You're delusional. This is what Zach was talking about.
I think probably...
Don't do that.
Probably sometimes people don't even know the definition.
All I know is that it sounded bad, and I would tell him, like, don't say that. Like, I'm not... Because it sounds like... That's like saying that your girlfriend or your wife is crazy. Like, that... To me, that's like the equivalent. Like,
yeah, but that's... And I think that's usually... If you only know that word by context... That's what you think it means. But that's not actually what it means. It's actually very specific. And so back to ways you can handle this. So you got to gently work your way into being that person of trust. That means you can't judge them. You can't put expectations on them. You have to be patient with them. What'd you say? Can't
put expectations on when they're going to be healed, or when they're going to confront their trauma.
You have to just take every opportunity. Now, you have to craft your questions in the right way, because, and Jesus was so good at this. When he knew that somebody had ill intent and they were asking him a question, he would answer with another question. And it would expose their question, expose the motive behind their question, right? So this is something that I've learned to do, is whenever I feel like I'm caught off guard by what somebody says, does, like a question they ask or whatever, I take a moment and I consider not what they said, but why they said what they said. And I speak to that instead of what they actually said. And I wouldn't consider it reading between the lines. And I don't know if it's also coupled with like discernment. It might be, but knowing what questions to ask is so important in those moments.
Or when to not ask any.
Yeah, and you can't be too obvious about it. But what you want to do is unravel that delusion. So step by step, you're asking, do you believe this? She says, no. Okay. That's good. I think that's not true, and I think it's good that you don't believe that. Do you believe this? Yes. Okay. Well, here's an example, some proof that I can show to you. Do you see this proof? Yes, I see this proof. Do you believe this proof? Yes. Do you see that this proof and what you believe over here don't match? Huh.
Yeah, that's when you really start to get a sense that you're delusional, because it's like he would say questions like that would be like, there's no way around it. Like, something in your mind is not right.
And so that's where it's like you have to systematically pick these things apart. And also, I think the third person idea is important too. Sometimes it's good to tell them, I want you to answer these questions as if you're advocating for yourself. Like you're a person that's what's the word? Unbiased and has no dog in the fight, right? I want you to act like you're sitting on behalf of yourself. Like you're sitting right over here next to you, but the one that I'm talking with is advocating for that other you. But the one I'm talking to, that you're seeing it from a unbiased, open perspective, and advocate for yourself. And so picking apart these delusions, you got to have the right heart. It's got to be in a place of love, because if it's not, they're going to know it, and it's going to come across in what you ask or say and how you say it.
And then it's just going to get worse.
Absolutely.
The walls are going to get
there
higher.
Can't ever be any I told you so, or finally I proved it.
Right. Or
none of that.
Or bringing up the trauma or the delusion in another, like, for anything other than to be healed. Like, if you know your significant other is dealing with delusions because of a trauma, don't ever bring that up in a negative way, because that's going to build another wall. And I'm so thankful that he's been the one that has been dealing with me because he's done it very well. I can honestly say, because I probably would still have every single delusion if it wasn't for him talking to me and sitting down and trying to figure out what was going on. So thank you for that.
Anything for you. So I want to also talk about this from more of a spiritual perspective too. So I mentioned Demons by Dostoevsky and how he used them as an example. Okay. She's pregnant, so she's gonna hit the restroom. But I had a new screen. I wanted to use it, but oh well. Do you have to go to the bathroom, Jason?
No, I'm good, bro.
You're good?
That's not what I need.
Dang.
I need sleep.
All right. Well, we got a little more to go, but we'll wrap it up here in a little bit.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions or?
No one else.
Okay, cool.
Wow.
So when it comes to delusions, like in essence, they're lies. They're lies that you believe that have no correlation with reality. No, they're not grounded in anything real, right? So, we've had this conversation about, can Christians be oppressed, possessed, whatever, by demons? And like, I mean, I don't understand why this is even a question anymore. But let's just say that you think that, Christians can't have demons. Can Christians believe lies? Because that's just as bad. Because if you have a lie, a seed of untruth planted in your heart, and you believe that, then you're going to act on that and operate in that way. And if you're operating like that, then you're just as much possessed by an idea than you would have been possessed by a demon. You good?
Yep.
So, you don't even have to be possessed by a demon to be possessed by a demon or demonic influence.
I think they call it a stronghold.
A stronghold. That's exactly it. So it's like Christians can have strongholds, but they can't have demons. What does it matter? It's the same effect. You get the same fruit either way. So I think having that, trying to argue over that is just stupid. It doesn't even make sense anymore.
I think it might be just the whole Hollywood going and influencing the way people see or think of demon possession and exorcism and everything. And then when you're freeing someone of a stronghold, it's more of it's a different process. Yeah. It's more psychological, more intellectual.
Healing.
But at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. It's something that is irrational and destructive, and God is ultimately the key to going and freeing ourselves from it when we agree with Him and agree with the truth.
Yeah, and when you have God in your life and you have faith in Him, not just that He exists, but that He has goodwill towards you and that He loves you, why wouldn't He free you from whatever it is? So you can ask the Holy Spirit to expose lies. Like, if you really want to humble yourself and check for delusions,
be ready.
Yeah, because everybody deals with this to a certain degree.
It just depends on the depth of the trauma.
Right. And how much you let that trauma dictate your beliefs.
And how much pride you have.
And absolutely that. if the whole world revolves around you, then it's very likely that you are extremely delusional.
It's true. It's so sad, but it's so true.
Yes. Like,
And don't let it ruin any relationships, because that's the whole point.
and I'm sure we all know somebody that's like that.
Yep,
But
definitely.
I could think of a few examples of people that I know that, like, the way they talk about, like that book was just saying, people that are really self-centered think that they are owed something, or that they're not justly treated. And it's like, what do you actually deserve? What do you actually think that you deserve? Like, we're wretched creatures.
Right.
Like,
That goes back to what I was saying.
we have the capacity for great evil. And if you can't recognize that and realize that you don't deserve anything, like, then you probably got some delusions.
Definitely have delusions.
What?
I was going to say it's getting late, but there's a lot of things that we didn't really get to. If you guys want us to do a part 2, maybe next week or something, so we can kind of finish the rest of the story and see what comes with that, let us know, because we would love to do it.
That sounds good. I think we'll do a part 2.
Okay.
Jason needs to go to sleep, and so do I.
So do I.
Yeah, so.
And
so do you. So, you know what?
But thank you guys for watching
Thank you.
all this time. It's been a long one, but we really appreciate you guys, and we're our prayer more than anything else is that this would open a door to your minds and where you're really at, and that you would have faith to ask the Lord for help in whatever area you can relate to, because he's the only, like, we give him glory for everything that we discussed, because there's no way we would have gotten through any of it without him. And so I just want to push that and put the focus on him, because marriage and relationships are very, very challenging. And that's why we have him with us. So I just encourage you guys to go to him and ask him.
Yeah, it all goes back to God, man, because even, like I said, marriage being a triunion, even the marriage process is an example of the born again process. Literally. Like, this maps on perfectly. Watch this. When you hear the gospel, you believe on Jesus, and what happens spiritually is that when you believe on him, you, in the baptism is the physical enactment of this, dying with Christ on the cross and being buried with him in the grave, and then rising from the dead with him unto a new life, unto his life. That's being born again, right? Marriage is the same thing. Marriage is, you hear the message, the calling, you feel it. It's like, I want to spend my life with you. I want to do this forever with you. You hear that calling, you feel that love, that calling, you respond to it with, out of the mouth you speak it, right? You declare your love. And when you get married with somebody, and if you don't understand this, you're going to go through hell in marriage. When you marry somebody, you die. You die. Both of you. You're buried. Your old life, everything before that moment is dead. And you resurrect as one person. So, I'm gonna leave y'all with that. Love you guys, and we'll see you next time here at Astroville. Share it if you think it might help somebody. We're out.